This morning, a dire forecast in Dallas County. Doctors say the COVID-19 Delta variant will send cases surging over the next 6 weeks, perhaps to a new record. But the governor has restricted local authorities. County Judge Clay Jenkins on the few options he now has. Tomorrow, the Texas Senate delves into college sports. Dozens of lawmakers furious over UT leaving the Big 12 for the SEC. State Senator Beverly Powell is on that committee and will tell us what to expect. The Texan who was supposed to be on the congressional committee investigating January 6th. Congressman Troy Nehls from Fort Bend County bravely joined police that day. He's with us from D.C. about the issues he says are alarming and need to be investigated. And voters in North Texas defeated Donald Trump's pick for Congress, instead sending State Rep Jake Ellzey to D.C. Everyone is talking about the ramifications of Trump's influence, and so are we.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning to you on this first day of August. Lots to get to, but let's begin things with the top political headlines here in Texas. State lawmakers are furious at UT for leaving the Big 12 conference. So tomorrow, the Texas Senate is convening a hearing. Senators chosen for this select committee are either graduates of Big 12 schools like Baylor and Texas Tech and TCU, or they represent them. Lawmakers tell us they feel blindsided by UT's decision and worry that it could impact other sports programs across the state. A handful of Texas lawmakers testified before Congress the other day. 3 Democrats and 1 Republican spoke to a subcommittee of the U.S. House's Oversight and Reform Committee. State Rep Sinfronia Thompson from Houston there, Nicole Collier from Fort Worth, and Diego Bernal from San Antonio, they all criticized Republican attempts to change how and when Texans vote. And a single Republican, State Rep Travis Clardy, he dialed in from Nacogdoches and spoke in support. Congress still does not have the votes to pass any national reform. And in case you missed it, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton got Donald Trump's endorsement for re-election. Not really a surprise there. What was interesting, though, is how Texas Land Commissioner George P. Bush spun this. You know, Bush is running against Paxton, and Bush badly wanted Donald Trump's support, too. Bush even tweeted out images and praise for Trump, making it look like the two were very close. This is despite Trump bad-mouthing George P.'s father, Jeb Bush, and his uncle, former President George W. Bush, back in 2016. Let's begin our program here with Donald Trump and the deadly violence that his supporters committed at the U.S. Capitol in January. Congress began hearings on it last week, and one Texan was supposed to take part until Republicans yanked him and others off in protest. But Congressman Troy Nehls still has questions. He is a Republican who represents parts of Fort Bend and Brazoria counties outside Houston, and he spoke to us from his office in Washington. Congressman, welcome to the program here. Speaker Pelosi accepted you to be on the committee and 4 other Republicans as well. But when Pelosi rejected 2 of your colleagues, that's when Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy pulled everyone off. Do you think that was a mistake by not giving you a voice?
No, I don't believe so. And first off, Jason, thank you for having me. No, what happened is Speaker Pelosi had her pick. She chose 8, and Leader McCarthy had the ability to select 5. He selected 5 with Mr. Banks and Mr. Jordan and I and others. But when she rejected 2, what she did is she rejected all 5. In the history of this institution, in over 230 years, it's never happened where the speaker has rejected the picks from the minority. It's never happened before. So she really, quite honestly, when she rejected 2, she rejected all 5.
Congressman, you said that I read that you said that you reviewed a Senate report, you and your staff did, and discovered things in the report that are alarming and need to be investigated. What are some of those things?
Number one, the Capitol Police, the senior leadership of the Capitol Police had an enormous amount of intelligence. They just didn't share it with people. There's a January 3rd report that was so conflicting. I mean, and it was an intelligence report. It was the last report that they actually disseminated, but they only disseminated it to the leadership of the Capitol Police. That's why Mr. Dunn, that one of the officers, he thought, what is happening happening here? This was supposed to be, January 6th was supposed to be no different than any other demonstration. So no, that report says at the end of it now, it's several pages, maybe 15, 16 pages. At the end, it talked about their intelligence showed that the Capitol building was going to be on the radar. The Capitol building, they were coming to the Capitol. They talked about extremist organizations and groups. They mentioned the Proud Boys. They mentioned Oath Keepers. There was an enormous amount of intelligence, Jason, but it wasn't disseminated and it wasn't shared. Because if I would have been the chief of police at that point in time on January 3rd, and I saw that report, I would have had the National Guard activated, ready to go on January 4th. They would have been here on the 5th, and they would have been here on the 6th.
Could you have done that, though, without the White House approval?
You don't need the White House approval. What you need is it's called the Capitol Police Board, which is made up of the 2 sergeant at arms, okay, the 2 sergeant at arms, and the architect of the Capitol. So I think the chief of police would have shared that information to those gentlemen, Mr. Irving and Mr. Stanger. I think they could have got that done. And ultimately, yes, you would work with the DC Capitol, the DC National Guard, General Walker. You would have had the Guard here on the 4th. They should have been here on the 4th.
Congressman, I want to switch gears in the final moments here, too. Democrats and Republicans in the Senate reached a bipartisan deal on the infrastructure proposal proposed by President Biden. You obviously sit on the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. I'm curious, based on what you're hearing there on Capitol Hill, do you support this?
Well, what you do, Jason, this is what I do know. You hear a lot of things. I haven't seen the text of the bill. I don't know exactly, you know, we saw a picture on the lawn a couple of weeks ago where President Biden came out and said that he had Republicans in Senate and Democrats working together on a bipartisan infrastructure bill, but I haven't seen the bill in its current text, so I'm going to reserve judgment on whether I will support this bill or not. I just haven't seen it.
And it sounds like you're getting called to vote right now. Congressman, thanks for the time. We appreciate you appearing on the program.
Thank you, Jason. God bless.
Now to Austin, where Governor Abbott is getting the kinds of headlines that he wants. Abbott issued an executive order last week outlawing ground transportation of migrants who might pose a risk of carrying COVID-19. Abbott even ordered state troopers to stop and search vehicles with reasonable suspicion. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland suggests this is ripe for abuse, calling Abbott's order dangerous and unlawful. Ross Ramsey is watching this one unfold. He's the co-founder and executive editor of the Texas Tribune in Austin, as always. Ross, good morning to you.
Good morning, Jason. How are you?
Doing well here. You know, Governor Abbott wants attention on the border rather than on the virus as he tries to improve his reputation with Republicans, it seems like.
He's going after the border on the basis of COVID, though. It's really interesting. You know, he says the migrants are spreading the disease, and that's why they need to stop these carloads of migrants. The question is, how do you stop a carload of migrants? How do you identify it as a carload of migrants? It may be a carload of Hispanics. How do you know whether they're citizens or not? The protest against this is that it's racial profiling and that it's illegal. The Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney General apparently agree with that assessment.
Yeah, we'll see how that one plays out there. Let's talk about the legislative session that wasn't, the special legislative session. It is over at the end of the week. Nothing obviously happened with the Democrats in D.C. What are you expecting next session?
I think they probably come back, you know, next Saturday when this session is over. They can last up to 30 days. The governor has said he will call another session immediately. The question is, A, whether the Democrats are back, and B, how the governor proceeds. Is he going to start by getting this legislative budget veto out of the way? This is the thing that would stop the legislative branch of government on September 1st. Or does he press ahead first with voting laws and start the standoff all over again?
All right, Ross, back to you in a moment. Thank you. Coming up, the Texas Senate convening a hearing tomorrow to talk the future of college sports. But is this anything more than a chance to slam UT for leaving the Big 12? We'll ask State Senator Beverly Powell. She's on the committee and joins us when we come back. And doctors are sharing a dire forecast for Dallas County. The Delta variant will cause a surge in COVID hospitalizations in the next few weeks. Dallas County Judge Clay Jenkins slams Governor Abbott for further restricting local authorities who are trying to deal with it. You're watching Inside Texas Politics. Here Here we are on this first day of August, and it is almost back to school time. If you had anxiety last fall, educators really have it now. Dallas ISD Superintendent Dr. Michael Hinojosa told us this fall could be more problematic than last year, and he laid out the reasons why. Hinojosa said Dallas ISD, though, is taking steps to help students catch up, like hiring 1,800 tutors right now. This is an inside look at what one of the largest school districts in Texas is doing right now. If your phone is handy, you can grab this podcast and listen to later. Just aim your camera at this QR code. It will take you directly to this podcast. And remember, new episodes come out every Tuesday. We've all let our guard down since the vaccine came out. Most of us have, at least. But doctors in Dallas County just released a concerning forecast the other day. COVID-19's Delta variant is spreading quickly in North Texas, and unless something changes, doctors forecast that Dallas County's hospitals could fill up, even surpass last winter's record. But what might change? Governor Abbott refuses to mandate masks and has further restricted what local authorities can do. So what options really remain for local leaders across our state? Those are among the questions we have for Dallas County Judge Clay Jenkins.
Judge, it's good to see you again. Thanks for being here. Without any changes, by the county or by any cities, UT Southwestern says we're going to surpass our hospitalization peak from last winter. What realistically are you expecting?
I'm expecting what UT Southwestern says will happen. There's not a lot that cities and counties can do because our governor has stripped cities and counties of the ability to do the things that the CDC and the local doctors say would keep us safe, like requiring masks as our kids start back to school.
I want to ask you about that because as a leader on the local level, the governor has essentially tied your hands, it seems like. What options do you have left?
Well, the main option that we have is to encourage and to get our community to work together. What you need to remember is the governor's decisions are based on polls of how people who are likely to vote in his primary next year feel about issues. The CDC's recommendations are based on data and science and are made by people who've spent their entire adult lives preparing to advise us in this moment. We need to follow what they're saying. So what does that mean? It means that if we're unvaccinated, we need to get vaccinated just as soon as possible. This is particularly important for our children age 12 and up, because as they go back to school, the more vaccinated people in the school setting, the better chances for everyone to have a close to normal school experience, which we all want for our kids. And it means as parents that we work with the schools to mask our children in school so that they're not having COVID waves in school and screwing up our school year and bringing that COVID back to the parents. Because Jason, right now at Parkland, if you were to go look into the rooms of the people who have COVID, they're 20 to 40 years old. That's the age of these parents.
Judge, have you been made aware of any plans by the State Department of Health and Human Services, by the governor's office, anything to combat the Delta variant?
No, as far as I know, they're not doing anything other than stating that it is, a very serious situation. And people should act with personal responsibility. Personal responsibility is a very important component of, fighting a pandemic, but also government leadership that follows science is needed, and unfortunately here in Texas is lacking.
Judge, thank you very much for the time. We appreciate it. Good luck to you.
Thank you. Have a great week.
Tomorrow in Austin, 11 state senators will gather to talk sports. This is a select committee that Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick organized. Why? Because so many state lawmakers are furious at UT for leaving the Big 12 and joining the SEC. State Senator Beverly Powell is on that committee. She is a Democrat who represents Texas Christian University in Fort Worth. Senator Powell, thanks for coming back on the program. It's good to see you again. I want to ask you about this committee meeting tomorrow. Does it have any power at all to do anything?
Well, Jason, what I would say to that is that our legislature makes decisions about funding higher education every biennium. This biennium, we allocated $16.2 billion to higher education. That's about 14% of our gross revenue, our general revenue funds. And I think that equally as important as allocating resources is that we have oversight to make sure that we protect all of our universities in the state of Texas, and that we make decisions that strengthen all institutions.
Why should a public school like UT prop up private schools like TCU there in your district or Baylor in Waco?
Well, I don't really look at it as propping up schools. We have goals for educating our workforce in the state of Texas, and it's going to take every single institution that we have to be able to reach those goals. The institution that the other state-funded, taxpayer-funded institution that is going to be impacted by this decision is Texas Tech. So certainly it's time for us to understand what those ramifications are going to be.
And for our viewers who might be, UT grads or might not have a dog in this fight here, explain the concern that people have in Waco, there in Fort Worth, and Lubbock about UT going to the SEC.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I've said this already, that this is not just a decision about athletics. This is also a decision about economics. The cities of Lubbock and Waco and Fort Worth stand to lose hundreds of millions of dollars in travel, food, and entertainment businesses. We stand to lose, depending on the decision that gets made here, we could lose anywhere from 3,000 jobs in the state of Texas to 7,000 jobs. So this is an economic decision as well as an athletic decision.
Do you foresee the legislature punishing UT in any way for taking off to the SEC?
I would doubt that, Jason. I don't think that this is necessarily going to be a punitive action. This is just, this committee is a response to a need to look at our overall picture in the state of Texas. This was a unilateral decision that is going to have broad reaching impact on Texas Tech, on Baylor, on TCU, which lies in my own district. So I'm happy to have the opportunity to serve on this committee and be part of solving the problems that are going to be associated with this reorganization.
Senator, we'll be watching to see what happens. We appreciate your time as always.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate the invitation to be with you today.
Donald Trump suffered a defeat at the ballot box in North Texas last week. Is he less influential than Republicans believe? We'll talk about that next on the Roundtable. Time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Ross Ramsey is back with us from the Texas Tribune. Bud Kennedy is here from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. And Bernadine Steptoe, political producer at WFAA in Dallas, joins us each week as well. Ross, will start with you. Jake Ellzey was not the Trump-endorsed candidate for Congress, but he still defeated the Trump-endorsed candidate for Congress. Both are Republicans. Jake Ellzey defeated Susan Wright. The question people are asking, is Trump losing some of his shine among Republicans?
Well, I think a lot of people thought that without much other information in this race, that Republicans would vote for Donald Trump. The turnout was really low, and there was some evidence that Democrats showed up for Jake Ellzey because of Donald Trump. It puts a ding in Trump's armor, but we'll have to see the results of a full normal election before we really know whether he's still got his mojo.
And like Ross said, Bud, Democrats came out to play in this as well, too. They could easily vote in this election.
The Democrats came out after all to vote. This was a general election, although it was between two Republicans. And, you look at the math, it's a 55-45 district. If you put all the Democrats and the Republicans who don't like Trump together, then Jake Ellzey goes to Washington.
So what happens here, Bernadine? If you're a Republican candidate, you run for office, you still want to seek out Trump's endorsement, I presume, especially statewide or a congressional seat, right?
Absolutely. He is still the most popular Republican in the country, and he's popular in Texas, just not as popular as he used to be. However, please don't underestimate Ellzey, because he was a pretty good candidate.
Yeah, and I think the question is, like Ross mentioned, what happens in a regular election? Does Ellzey keep that seat? What kind of turnout does he get among Republicans, right?
Well, yes, but I have seen in the past that when you have voters who work hard to elect a candidate, they're going to keep that candidate in office. So whoever runs in another election, they're going to have a hard time.
Well, let's shift off to sports, something we don't do on our program here. Ross, you're down there with UT, man. Give me an idea what people are saying down there. And secondly, there's a hearing down there tomorrow in the Texas Senate. What's all the political fuss about this? We didn't see this from when A&M left for the SEC 10 years ago.
Well, I think the first thing here is that, you can see that things down here actually still work when people are interested in it and the wheels are turning. They did a lot of preloading on this. They did a lot of work before any of us knew about it. And by the time it was in public, it was pretty much a done deal. It's going to make a bunch of money for UT and probably for OU. It's going to hurt the other Big 12 teams. But I think this was coming. I think this is the business of sports right now.
Bud?
You have a Southern Baptist lieutenant governor who's upset. They're Southern Baptists, have a lot of votes in Texas. And so he wants to try to help Baylor in some way, but it looks real tough for Baylor, and the LGBT stance is going to make it tough. California schools won't want the Bears. Dan's trying to help all the other Texas schools, but it's way late. He's no Bob Bullock.
He's no Bob Bullock. Bernadine, you're shaking your head, but let me tell you this. I was talking to a state lawmaker the other day on the phone about this, and this state lawmaker said that he thinks that Greg Abbott might actually be hurt by this in places like Waco and in Lubbock because he didn't do what he could to call the whole deal off. What do you think?
I don't think so. Because I think that fans understand, and voters as well, that sports now is a business. And in terms of a business, those who are going to the SEC, which is UT, they're going to benefit. So I don't think that Abbott, and then you know what?
We're out of time, Bernadine. Hold that thought, and we'll talk to you more about that. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for watching as well. We're back again next Sunday. Have a good week.